This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
From the beginning of time, humans have tried to heal themselves with ritual and prayer, and with whatever nature provided. Through thousands of years of trial and error, formal systems of healthcare developed, systems based on foods, herbs, and other natural remedies. These systems live side by side with what we call Western medicine. Western medicine has been an enormous benefit in helping to conquer devastating infections and perfecting surgical procedures. But there is more to medicine than doctors and hospitals, and that's exactly what we'll explore this week on A Better Way to Health. Hello, I'm Stuart Shipe, a registered pharmacist, acupuncture physician, and Chinese herbalist. I'm your host this week. We make no effort to recommend or to judge, only offer that you explore a theory that good medicine comes in many forms. So let's get started. Phone lines are open for you this morning for questions, comments, or experiences about your health on WPSL at 340-1590. That's 340-1590. Let's hear from you.
Hey, well, welcome, folks, to another episode of A Better Way to Health. I'm Dr. Stuart Shipe, a board-certified acupuncturist. I'm actually a board-certified registered pharmacist, and actually I also practice herbal medicine. So this is a time that you need to get your health back, or at least get questions about your health, by giving us a call or contacting us in some way, sort, or fashion. Easiest is we've got WPSL with us this morning. You can get online at 340-1590. They also will host the show via WPSL TV. Is it WPSLTV.com?
TV on TuneIn.
TuneIn.
WPSL on TuneIn on your app on your phone. WPSL TV on YouTube. Sorry about that.
Very good. So there's that way. You can get on Facebook.com/Dr. Shipe and watch the show live as well. Or simply just call the office, 398-4550. My staff can actually take and field some questions for me. If you're interested about finding out more in depth, of course, our website, traditionalchinesehealing.com, is undergoing transformation right now, but has loaded with a lot of information about the products we have, the services we provide, and what Chinese medicine ultimately is. You can watch short little clips of me giving some informational lectures on Chinese medicine or on health in general. So get your questions in. This is a show for you, not for me. It's all about getting back into balance again and trying to find that health that you once lost. And I've had some great runner-up. Actually, I had a patient that just talked about Miss Joanne from Nutrition World. She said, yeah, there's some lady talking on your show about breathing. I was like, oh, she's a smart cookie. You know, it's all about, wearing masks and all this kind of stuff about we don't breathe. We never learned how to breathe right anyway. We're all breathing from our lungs, not from our diaphragms. And now you make it even tougher by everybody having a mask on themselves. So of course it leads to poor health, folks. I mean, people say, oh, I know how to breathe. I've been breathing since I was born. You ever watch a little baby laying in a crib? It's the lungs don't inflate and go down. The belly goes up and the belly goes down. If you really watch a young child before the age of 2 years old, when they're sleeping flat, you'll notice that they abdominally breathe. They're using these very strong abdominal muscles to take air in. And it's been clinically shown that when you do deep diaphragmatic breathing, when you're breathing here from the abdominal instead of breathing from the lung, these little tiny intercostal muscles, and using these big abdominal muscles to breathe, it's actually shown to reduce stress in the body and reduce stress like hormones, like cortisol and things like that. So pretty cool stuff about breathing. So thank you, Joanne, for bringing that up and enlightening us about the art of breathing, right? So what have we got going on today? I thought about probably the most frequent question I ever get in my office, and whether related to disease, maybe not, but people want to know, Dr. Shipe, do I really need to take herbs, herbal medicine? And my doctor told me that herbs are going to cause more problems, that herbs aren't safe to take, that there's herbal alternatives to many, many different drugs that might not be acceptable, might make your symptoms worse. Oh, I hear it all. So I ask you a question. If you wanted to know about your feet, pain in the feet, would you ask a dentist? Probably not. Would you ask a cardiologist? Probably not. So my question to you is, why are you asking your biomedical physician, your Western medical physician, if you should take herbal medicines or not? And I would, unless they are board certified or they have additional specific training in herbal medicine, they're probably not the best resources to be asking about herbs that they don't understand. And this is very true as far as pharmacists as well. And me being a pharmacist probably puts me front line and center, is the fact that probably pharmacists, the great, what I would call gatekeepers of pharmaceutical health, medication management, good communication with their patients, alleviating potential adverse reactions and potential side effects from taking medication correctly. Those are all great attributes that pharmacy brings to you and that a pharmacist can help you with. But even pharmacists are very misinformed about the use of herbal medicine. So I thought today that, since I actually teach Introduction to Herbal Medicine at the College of Pharmacy at Nova Southeastern University, that it would be a wise thing perhaps to get you guys a little bit more knowledgeable about what herbs can and what herbs possibly can't do, and what's kind of the difference between an herbal medicine and potentially a drug, and a litany of actually questions about, do herbs actually work? How do they compare to drugs? Why should we take them? Are all herbal supplements alike? Can herbs hurt you? How do you take herbs? These are all viable questions, and I get these questions every single day. So I felt that little by little, we'll tackle one by one. And if you have questions about herbal medicine, you have questions about your own health, or certainly another different topic, please feel free to call us, 340-1590 here at the studios, or you can type in your question, facebook.com/Dr. Shipe, Dr. and we'll get that taken care of. So what are some of these myths, right? I mentioned a couple of them with herbal medicine about there's herbal alternatives to drugs, because a lot of individuals that want to take herbs go to the health food store, or might even wander into a pharmacy and say to the clerk, usually someone that isn't trained or very experienced in herbal medicine, say, hey, listen, I want to get off my high blood pressure medication, or I want to sleep a little bit better. What would you recommend? And of course, they may give you a product like valerian or skullcap or some of these various herbs and say to you, oh, just take this because that's just like a sleeping pill. And probably the most prominent one that I can think of that most everyone suffers from as far as a disease modality is inflammation. Whether you feel it physically in a type of arthritis or a type of skin condition, or maybe even fever or an immune system problem. Anytime you have inflammation in the system, you might search out for something as an anti-inflammatory, something like cortisone or ibuprofen family, which is very effective at reducing inflammation. But the key is that people say, well, isn't there something natural that you can deal with inflammation? And comes to mind realistically something called licorice root, which is very, very powerful herb. And it has some so many great activities. Even in Chinese medicine, it's called a harmonizing herb, which means it kind of binds together all the other herbs in the formula and takes away some of the harsh effects of possibly the herbs, kind of a mediator to help smooth out the bumps in the road with this herbal formula, perhaps. And so you say, well, then isn't licorice root the alternative to taking prednisone? And I would say, you would think so, like you could just take St. John's wort and try and replace something like Zoloft or Paxil or Prozac or some of these type of antidepressant drugs. But see, it doesn't work like that. And although the symptom may be similar, whether it's herbal medicine looking at that symptom, or whether it's a Western biomedical physician looking at that symptom, and they're using a drug, the herbalist is using an herb. The herb is not a substitute for a drug. And the reason for that is a drug has one chemical in it, and it's very, very concentrated. And that concentrated chemical usually goes to one area in the body, one kind of receptor area, or to make it work, we call it, it binds to a receptor, binds to the tissue. and then it exudes its effect, right? It creates its effect. But an herb is different. An herb have thousands and thousands of phytochemicals. Instead of just one chemical, it's got thousands, possibly even more, some known, some unknown, which we'll never find. And that has effect in many, many different areas in the body, many, many tissues. And that's the big difference between an herb and a drug is that the effects on the body are so wide and varied in the body as far as herbs, where a chemical is only binding to one area. And when that chemical binds to an area that it's not supposed to bind to, and it affects a target tissue, known and unknown, because we just have theories of how drugs work as well. It's really not a true fact, because we can only postulate how what the mechanism of the drug works, just like herbal medicine, is a fact that when it works somewhere else, that's what we call a side effect or an adverse drug reaction that we're occurring from the medication, because it's working in an area of the body that we don't want it to, or that's unwanted. So that's about herbal alternatives to drugs. Are all herbal medicines safe? Well, that's a huge question. And so tongue in cheek, there's a yes and a no to that. And the problem with herbal medicines in America is that it's very hard to define it's not hard to define what quality is, but it's hard to define quality in far as herbal medicines. This is $1 billion industry, and there's a lot of individuals right now that are in it for the profit, a lot of corporations, a lot of companies trying to market herbal products. And when you really look at herbs, the danger in herbs, the danger comes from herbs that have been either substituted. And what does that mean? It means that herbs have a genus, a species, they have a family, like some herbs fit into certain families of plant medicine. And that same family may have the same genus, the same family of herbs, but a different species, very, very close or similar to the herb that we want, but it's not exactly like that herb. For instance, I can think of one very, very quickly. The true beauty of valerian root, which is Valeriana officinalis is the Latin name of it, is really the true pinnacle of a biomarker, which means we can actually look at the chemicals in valerian and say, wow, it has this chemical trace and it has this chemical trace. And since we use that herb in clinical studies and show that it had really good efficacy, which means it worked really, really well, we can probably count on the fact that since we used it and it was at these levels, that we should benchmark this herb, which means kind of take a picture of it, of its chemical structure. And now when we take in other herbs to produce, we're going to compare that herb's chemical signature, plant chemical signature, to what our benchmark is. And if it doesn't meet our standard, what that benchmark is, we're just going to refuse the herb. That's how really good herbal companies operate. They operate by batch testing herbs and doing quality assurance testing to make sure there's no mold, there's no bacterial contamination, that you have the right species of the herb. There was a really nasty herbal unfortunate case of the use of herbal medicine. They were in Belgium. It's called the Belgium slimming accident. You can Google that. What ended up happening is they had some biomedical physicians that were doing a weight loss program with I think it was over 50. I can't remember exactly how many test participants, but it was quite a few. And they were using a drug called acetazolamide, and they were using an herb in Chinese medicine. We call that guanfengji. That's what they actually use, but they were supposed to be using hanfengji, which was a very closely related species to that herb, but they're not the same chemical constituents. The previous herb, the hanfengji that I just talked about, has great effects with cardiovascular function, with kidney function, amazing effects in the body. But what they used was not the correct herb, and no one identified that they were using it. So I would call that a substituted herb if you're doing it on purpose, like some companies do. But in this case, it was a herb that no one knew that they were using the wrong species of the herb. Because I can, even in my herbal pharmacy, I can hold up these two herbs side by side and I can't tell the difference in smell, the difference in maybe the texture, the difference in its footprint. Impossible. You have to use chemistry. You have to use thin layer chromatography or chemical test in order to differentiate which herb is which. Well, it ended up after using this herb with the drug that herb had a lot of a chemical constituent that can cause the kidney to have some really nasty effects and started developing kidney problems. Well, at the end of it, they had to stop the study because within a couple of days of study, women started coming down with kidney failure. There was women that actually died during that clinical trial or ultimately ended up with kidney cancers, nasty, nasty effects. That's what I call no one watching the show. They didn't have an herbalist on board that was differentiating the herbs. They weren't using a quality herbal product. That's where we get in danger of using herbal medicine when you don't know about herbal medicine. You don't know how to look for quality issues with herbal medicine. You don't know how to analyze the herb. You don't know the right dose of the herb to take. That's actually a clinical practice. That's actually a profession. In my world, there's many great herbalists. The American Herbalist Guild, GUILD, is a group of credentialed physicians, credentialed healers, I would say, that have reached the capacity where they do have herbal education and they do use herbs very, very safe. And so when a physician, when a Western biomedical physician tells you don't use any herbs because they're all dangerous, definitely is a myth. Because you're right, your herbs can be very dangerous if you don't know how to utilize them and you don't respect them. Another great example was probably when I got into pharmacy school. I think there was a pitcher from the Cardinals that was using ephedrine, an ephedrine-like product that was concentrated to enhance energy, stamina, and ended up dying from cardiovascular issues. So all of a sudden the FDA said, oh no, no more ephedra, or in Chinese medicine, we would call that ma wang. No more ephedra is allowed in the United States because it can cause severe cardiovascular issues, even leading to death. I totally agree with one portion is untrained herbalists that are lay people, obviously exposed to a very powerful alkaloid type of product like ephedrine, will run into problems unless you know how to use that herb. The Chinese have been using ephedrine for 2,500 plus years without any evidence of cardiovascular effects or problems. Why? Because we know, stupid, you don't use the herb by itself. In nowhere in Chinese classical literature is ephedra or ephedrine used by itself. It's a very powerful drug. If you look at the constituent, the plant constituents in ma wang, you'll find out one of them is called, the family of that phytochemical is called an alkaloid. Most of our medications in today's pharmaceutical world have an alkaloid base. They're very, very powerful chemicals. And the Chinese have always respected ephedra. And whenever we use ephedra, we always use licorice root or ginger or some other herb in that combination with the ephedra that will negate or reduce the toxicity of that herb. And that's herbal medicine 101. That's the very beginning of what you learn is you, first of all, I even teach my pharmacy students when I teach them about herbal medicine. The very first thing you have to do is understand what constitutes a quality herb. And if you know what constitutes a quality herb, including all the testing, being able to identify the proper herb, being able to use research, you can use herbs very, very safely. So it definitely is a myth that all herbal medicines are unsafe. Now, on the flip side of the coin, you have a lot of people saying all herbs are definitely safe. And then I would have to say that is an incorrect statement as well. As I just told you, that herbs can have a lot of toxicity if used incorrectly or identified incorrectly or dosed incorrectly, given for the incorrect type of pattern, disease state pattern, you may have problems. So respecting herbs that way is a big deal. And I don't think really you should be taking herbal medicines from advice of store clerks that aren't well trained, that usually are just hearsay. It can be extremely Well, would you want to mess with your health? You're asking someone that maybe is making minimum wage in a lot of cases, and that has nothing to do with the wage, but just an individual that has very little training about herbal medicine, and you're entrusting them with your health, literally. And I don't think that's a very good thing or a very safe thing to do. So herbs are closely regulated in the US, right? We're going to take that one. We're going to take a short break here, but I really want to say that herbs are different in America. When you use herbal medicines in things like Australia or in Europe, herbal medicines are regulated very tightly as far as regard to the right plant material, the standards as far as industrial, the manufacturing of the herbs. But in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, only regulates or watches what is printed on the label of the herbal medicine. And a lot of people think that that's a myth. Like the FDA actually is checking what's actually in the bottle. They do not. So what's in the bottle is based on standards, industry standards, mostly called GMP, good manufacturing practices. Most good herbal companies, I'd say most good herbal companies, are using GMP as a standard to manufacture the herbs. And usually you can look on your herbal bottle and it'll say GMP certified or some letters GMP. That usually states that the company is at least using standards, industry standards, to make sure that there's no mold, there's no bacteria, that it's the right plant, so on and so forth. But it's mostly about documentation. It's about documenting batch sampling, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's still a high quality herb. It just means that they're using industry standards for good manufacturing processes. So how do you know what's actually in the bottle? How do you know if the herb that is on the label is actually the herb in the bottle? Unfortunately, that's a tough one. And you have to use good quality manufacturers that you know that do batch sampling and that have shown themselves oftentimes through third company processing or laboratory analysis. They'll send their products off to an independent from their company, an independent lab, and that lab will test the product to ensure that what is said on the label is actually what's in the capsule. That can be a big problem. The American Botanical Council, I would say probably now, oh my gosh, more than 20 years ago, ABC, American Botanical Council out of Austin, Texas, was going to they do great research, herbal research. They were going to say, we want to test the market for ginseng to see if the products that are on the shelves that you and I buy are actually the stated amount of ginseng in the product. And they actually took 10 samples, and they had companies calling them saying, oh, you don't have to buy it, we'll send you a sample. And the ABC group said, no. We're a nonprofit organization. We're going to do our own. We're just going to go right out into Austin, Texas, right at the shelf, buy it off the shelf, and we're going to test that product. It was scary, folks. Out of the 10 products that they actually ascertained, 8 of those products actually only didn't have the stated amount of herbal constituent. 8 out of 10 did not have the amount of herbs that was stated on the label, the amount of ginseng stated on the label. One of those herbs, 1 out of 10, had absolutely no ginseng in that product whatsoever. Only one of those herbal products, 1 out of 10 of those herbal products, actually had the stated level of ginseng at the right markers that was stated on the product. To me, that's kind of scary, going out in the general market and just purchasing herbs. And people say to me all the time, Dr. Shipe, you talked about echinacea all the time, and echinacea, I took it and I still got a cold, or I still never felt like it really worked that well. And they say echinacea doesn't work. And this is a problem because echinacea does work, and it works very, very well to boost the immune system's awareness. But you have to use the right plant, first of all. Echinacea pallidea, Echinacea purpurea, Echinacea angustifolia. So you thought there was only one echinacea. No, there's different species of echinacea. Some work better in the liver. Some work better as far as the immune system. So, and if you have the right plant, then you have to have the right dose. Now you have to have the right plant part, because if you're using echinacea, the leaves or the aerial part of echinacea, what's going to happen is it's high in these chemicals called polyphenols, but they don't get absorbed. You have to use the root. And why is it more effective? Why do you see more leaf than root? Is because you can constantly harvest the leaf and the plant will grow back again. But if you harvest the root, you destroy the plant. So if I were a manufacturing company and I wanted to make high profits, would you think, even if I had the information that the chemical that helps really the immune system boost comes from the root in way higher quantities than the leaf, then you think that, oh, I would only use the root. No, we still see today, you can go right to the store shelf and see Echinacea aerial parts. Aerial means the leaves, the branches. They have relatively no efficacy, no benefit to helping the immune system, but they sell it all day long. This is a problem, folks, is that herbal medicines are supposed to be regulated, we think, by the US FDA. They are not. Companies are all good companies, all honest companies. They are not. This is a problem, and this is why you need to depend on herbalists. Cliff, can we take a short break here? We're going to get your questions taken care of right back here at A Better Way to Health. If this conversation stirred you, I would take your questions 340-1590, or maybe you're using herbs right now for something that we can help you figure out. So give us a call, Dr. Stuart Shipe on A Better Way to Health. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back after this brief message.
Daddy, watch this dance.
That's some pretty good Irish step dancing.
I bet the Chinese people don't dance like that.
No, I don't think so, but they do have an amazing form of healing called acupuncture.
You're just saying that because you're an acupuncture physician, Chinese herbalist, and pharmacist.
No, when you get older, you'll contemplate being able to dance like you do now.
What's contemplate?
It's what a lot of Treasure Coast people do when they get older, have symptoms of disease and wish they had better health.
Healthy like me? Why don't they have a free evaluation at your office?
You're so smart. It's never too late to learn a better way to health, honey.
Have them call 398-4550. Ask for Dr. Stuart Shipe, my daddy. Their problems aren't going to get better, maybe worse.
Yes, it's called degenerative disease.
They'll feel much better if you can help them, right?
They'll feel great.
It doesn't cost anything to find out if you can help them.
Not a penny. I'm not going to waste their time or money if I can't help them.
Call Dr. Stuart Shipe at 398-4550.
Visit the office in North Stuart or the website, traditionalchinesehealing.com.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
All right, we're back to A Better Way to Health. Thanks, Cliff, for bringing us back. Listen, if you have questions, folks, again, the number 340-1590. If you're calling outside the local area here, it's 772. If you're watching me on Facebook, 772-340-1590. And always catching the show at WPSLTV.com on YouTube. And Cliff gave me I messed it up again, Cliff. WPSL.com, right, is a way to get to the studios.
You can actually push a red button and listen through TuneIn, the TuneIn app on your cell phone.
Okay.
And then now later, after we now record these shows for YouTube, on YouTube, we'll be at WPSLTV.com. That'll take you there, and look for Dr. Stuart Shipe's show right there.
Very good. Yeah, so if you don't catch the show, there's a couple of ways. You don't catch it in its entirety. I've had some patients that have come in, some people that have asked a lot of questions, said, I had to miss the show because I had to go into the market or go in and leave the car. And I was like, you can always catch the show certainly later as well. And there's high technology in order to do that, fortunately. So a lot of people going to the health food store, we had talked about a lot of the myths of herbal medicine and why I should take herbal medicine and what it's possibly going to be doing for me. People are taking ginkgo biloba. The sales, this was way back in the early 2000s. $147 million, ginkgo biloba. St. John's wort, $104 million. Ginseng was next, garlic, echinacea, saw palmetto, kava, soy, valerian, evening primrose oil, and then it went down from there. Glucosamine and chondroitin were really high on the supplement list there, not necessarily an herb, but more of a not a phytochemical, more of a chemical that we produce in our body naturally, glucosamine sulfate. and high in different types of products that can help with arthritic type problems in the joints. So did we answer the question? I hope we answered the question about some of the myths about herbal medicine and take away some of the confusion. Where does the confusion come from, with herbal medicine? Of course, the media, and of course, a lot of the myths about what we think as professionals we know, pharmacists, biomedical physicians, healthcare practitioners that really haven't dived in deep into herbal medicine to learn both the fact and the fiction. And of course, there's biases. I have a natural bias toward natural medicine because I'm a natural medicine practitioner. So my bias would be to refer a patient more to natural medicine first, and if not successful, to use our conventional contemporary medicine, drug, pharmaceutical medication, when things have gotten way out of control and we need to really start compensating for physiological function. But other than that, I really like enhancing our natural function. Let our body, God designed an amazing body that heals, that can heal itself. We just ultimately have to give the body the right tools. In Ezekiel, it's interesting. In the Bible, Ezekiel 47, verse 12 said, "The fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine." So not only in the Bible, all through history, herbal medicines have been used for thousands of years as the main natural healing source, other than prayer, which is the number one way to heal. It's been used in various cultures for thousands of years. But what are we inundated with? If you watch television, which sometimes can be disastrous for your health, Americans have a lot of pain in their joints and their muscles. Americans are often sick from colds or flus. Americans have a lot of problems with digestive disorders, from indigestion all the way to constipation, right? The idea of these commercials is that people just need to take this drug. If you take this drug, oh, you'll be happy-go-lucky. You'll be trouble-free forever. If you just take this drug for pain, now you can dance all night long. If you just take this drug for cold or flu symptoms, you'll never suffer from immune problems again. If you just take this drug for your digestive stuff going on, your stomach won't have any more problems and you can go back to eating whatever you wanted to eat. Isn't that just crazy when you kind of think about that? But that's what we're led to believe, because I don't know how many drug commercials, when you turn on the television in an hour, how many drug commercials actually you're exposed to. And it makes us as Americans kind of think that the drug is a fix-all. If you got a digestive problem, take a drug. If you got a pain problem, take a drug. If you can't sleep, take a drug. You'll have pretty butterflies dancing around your room all night long. If you can't take a product for arthritis, be like that golfer that takes that drug that can play now with a happy, smiling face. We get this concept that drugs are the healing modality. Drugs don't heal, folks. Let me tell you the truth. As a pharmacist for over 20 years, they are physiological compensators. They shut down some of the body's natural processes, whether it's inflammation, whether it's our immune system, and they try and take over our system. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to compensate. I don't know of one drug that actually is designed to enhance, that is designed to help support our normal physiology so that it can do its job. But that's exactly what herbal medicines do. Now, we can use herbal medicines as well, very powerful, concentrated, standardized extracts of herbs to use compensatory. Give you an example. What if a woman comes to see me for urinary tract infection, or she has symptoms? I don't treat the urinary tract infection. She comes to me and has symptoms of burning or frequent urination or the strong smell in the urine, very uncomfortable. And she says, "Dr. Shipe, can you help me with these symptoms? Because my Western diagnosis, my doctor told me I had a urinary tract infection." Well, in Chinese medicine, there's many, many different reasons potentially for those symptoms. But one big one would be called dampness and heat in the lower part of the body. Dampness meaning that she has fluids that are building up. Heat means there's some kind of infection or inflammation cooking down there. So when you give her herbal medicines, things like, even in Western medicine, uva ursi or bearberry, Or a buccal is an amazing, agathosma betulina is the Latin for that. When you give these herbs, you can give these in high standardized concentrations. They work. Their pharmacological properties are very, very similar to drugs. And you can use that herb as that strong medicinal, using that strong medicinal potency to literally treat the symptom. And they work very, very effectively. The problem is that we think only unilateral. We think symptom relieved by drug. Great thing, no more symptom, we're back to health. Wrong concept. Let me ask you a question. Why again, then, would you get a recurrent urinary tract infection? And I already gave you the answer. Why? WHY is the answer. You have to figure out the why. Why are you constantly having colds? Why do you get sick all the time? Why do you have postnasal drip all the time? Why do you have allergies? People are saying to me all the time, well, it's that time of the year. Well, I've had chronic allergies. They just write it off like it's something that is just part of the normal physiology. And it's not. It's definitely common, don't get me wrong, but having symptoms is never normal. Having postnasal drip is not normal. Having congestion, nasal congestion is not normal. Hair thinning or falling out is not normal. Arthritis is not normal. It's common. It's not normal, folks. The key is the why. What caused the urinary tract infection? Why is this body, is this woman's body more predisposed than getting an infection, to falling out of balance than another woman? Maybe she has better digest or weaker digestive health than another female. We know physiologically that we have transfer of bacteria from the colon, large intestine, and they can migrate right to the bladder. So, when you think about health, dietary status, hydration status, moods, maybe she's under a lot of stress, the stress activating cortisol or stressor hormones in the body. The elevation of these stressor hormones suppress the immune system. The immune system being suppressed becomes more opportunistic to an infection, even a bladder infection. You have to answer the question why as a physician. If a patient asks you, why do I have high blood pressure? Why do I have diabetes? The answer is not you're eating too much sweets for diabetes. Because then if everyone ate a ton of sweets, then everyone would have diabetes. It's getting there. We're like 50% of America is right now pre-diabetic or already full-blown diabetic. So maybe that wasn't a bad analogy. But what I'm saying to you is that why do some people live to 100, some people live to 50? You're going to say genetics. No, that is ruled out as well. Epigenetics, we know, has a large contribution to how we express genes. Epigenetics means that how you lived your life, how you exercise, what food you ate, what kind is your mental status, all affect whether you express those genes and how you ultimately get disease in the future. It's a huge practice, very fascinating practice of medicine right now called EPI genetics, epigenetics. And that's how does this environment affect our health? Not how do our specific genes, we already have the genes. Your mom and your dad gave you 2 pairs of identical DNA genes. So it's not about the genes. You're already predisposed on the genes. What I'm talking about, are you turning them on or you're turning them off? Parents gave you the light switch. Are you going to turn the light switch on and have all this disease expression, get autoimmune disease or arthritis or heart disease or varicose veins, another genetic problem? Or are you going to keep the light switch off? Why? How do you keep the light switch off and not express the gene? Good diet, good exercise, doing Qigong, yoga, Tai Chi, doing these calming mind-body exercises, living a different lifestyle, obviously, than I would say the common American does. And so if we're confused about herbal medicines or about vitamins, I would say probably someone that would be confused would walk into my office like they do, and they've got maybe 6, 7, 10 different supplements they're carrying in a bag, 2 or 3 different medications. They've been saying, oh, I heard that on the radio that this brain power helps my cognition or helps me so I won't lose my memory. And this herb right here, it's magnesium is really good for that. Or I heard that zinc is good for the immune system. And we're really taking care of our health, letting the media dictate how well we feel. Isn't that scary, folks? Or doesn't that make you kind of want to wake up and say, I don't really want to have my health dictated by the media or by some person telling me I should be taking vitamin C and zinc and magnesium and elderberry, which, oh my gosh, I could spend a whole hour on that as well. Is it a good herb? It's a great herb. But then we have to go back and look at ultimately the root of what I'm talking about. Is it quality, and is it the right herb for the right person? I want to thank Tracy. Thanks for watching on Facebook. Linda, thank you so much for watching too on facebook.com. You have questions, type them in, ladies, and I'll be happy to answer those for you as long as you're online. So if you feel confused about whether to take herbs or not, you're not alone. There's so many misconceptions out there. And as I've alluded to, and then you have problems with weight. Say, oh, Dr. Shipe, I'm gaining weight. What do you think that's coming from? And they've got a host of supplements they're taking, 2, 3, 4, 7 different drugs they're taking. I just point to them, and I point to the bags and say, until you don't take a lot of this stuff, you're never going to drop weight. Because the reasons for weight, let's go back even further. The reason for, I'm going to put my foot out, just like Royal Lee did, a genius in the nutrition industry. He was a dentist back in the 1950s. He said, he owned a company called Standard Process. He said, all disease, mark none, all disease comes from nutritional deficiencies. And I truly do believe that, is that today, there's a great book, not giving him a plug, but I think it was written by Mark Anderson and Bernard Jensen. It's called Empty Harvest. If you've never read a book about natural medicine, about our nutritional status in the United States, and about why we are suffering from devastating diseases, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, which is really an inflammatory disease at its root, you've got to read that book. It's an easy read, it's in layman's language, and it's factual. It gives you not myths, but actual facts from how did the FDA start, how do they grade our food, what does our food look like? I mean, when we start really doing stupid stuff like pasteurizing, homogenating, adding emulsifiers, food colorings, food flavorings, where did all that craziness start, right? Well, it started back right after World War I and World War II, when all of a sudden we had a huge migration of people from the rural communities to the urbanization communities, moving into the city. And it presented a problem. The problem was we always went to the local farmer's market because, maybe you have never been to a farmer's market. Man, if you've ever been to the farmer's market up near Atlanta, amazing. And I'm sure I've heard some of the seniors talking about the farmer's market we had right here in St. Lucie County in Fort Pierce. Amazing that we were able to eat and purchase locally grown fresh food and fresh vegetables. But when you had urbanization, everybody was in the city. So now we had a problem in how do you transport that fresh food all the way to the city, because you can't grow a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables unless you had hydroponics back in those days. So how do you transfer them? Well, the food industry was actually developed the processed food industry was developed at that time. And that's when we actually started doing things like stripping out all the germ out of our wheat, because those natural oils and from the grain would rancidify the bread. You've always heard about things like day-old bread, right? As being like, oh my gosh, it's a day old and it's already gone bad. That's what bread's supposed to do. It's supposed to go bad after a day or 2 days, because it starts rancidifying. Those oils and those enzymes in the germ, in the actual grain, are where all the vitamins are, all the minerals, all the innate intelligence of that grain. It's kind of like the locomotive of the grain, the caboose that handles all of the coal, so to speak, the driving force behind the locomotive. The caboose is the endosperm. It's all that starchy residual of the grain that actually feeds the plant when it's in its growth phase. But here's the key, is they stripped that out. They stripped the germ out and just gave us the endosperm, which is really just a starchy portion. And then just like Wonder Bread, you wonder why you haven't died from eating it. They sprinkle the 7 natural grains. So they say, oh, I eat whole grain bread. Well, no, you're eating processed bread that's stripped and denuded of all of its vitamins and minerals. And they spray back in vitamin B1, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, B6. All those vitamins are sprayed synthetically back into the product or added back into the product. And now they call that enriched bread. Why did they have to do that? Because people were really having problems with these processed foods when they first came out. Scurvy, significant problem. And you're like, we don't have scurvy today. We don't have these devastating pellagra, any of these. We have I see people walking in my office with subclinical scurvy. They're not eating fruits and vegetables. They're not eating green leafy plants. They're not getting enough whole food vitamin C. No, they're taking ascorbic acid, which is not vitamin C. It's just the wrapper of the vitamin C molecule. It's kind of like eating a banana peel and never getting the banana. So if you're taking 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, you're not taking vitamin C. You're not taking what vitamin C is, this beautiful molecule. I kind of got off the cart here thinking about or telling you about nutrition, but herbs work the same way. You have to think about herbal medicines as herbal food. Because why? Where do a lot of plant material comes? Herbs come from plant material, and they come from mineral material and animal material too. Let's just talk about plants. Let's just talk about herbs for just a second. A plant is an amazing, amazing organism. And what a plant does, it has primary characteristics and it has secondary characteristics as far as its metabolism. The primary characteristics, it takes in sunlight, takes in carbon dioxide, and it creates oxygen, right? But that also allows it to create food for itself in order to survive. And it uses that energy, that food energy from sunlight, carbon dioxide, to convert some of that energy into defensive chemicals. And those defensive chemicals are to protect the plant. These are called plant secondary characteristics. Why does a plant need secondary characteristics? Because not only are humans picking them for herbs, but deers are eating plants, or animals, or fungi, or mold, or bacteria. All of those are actually want to eat the plants too. The plant doesn't want to be eaten. So it creates secondary characteristics like, for instance, really, really bitterness. So when an animal eats a plant, oh, it's so bitter, the animal doesn't want to eat that. And animals learn pretty good. Unlike humans, they learn pretty good. If you do something you don't feel right, or it makes you feel sick, you don't do it again. Unlike humans, they keep on repeating the same stupid processes over and over. They eat something, they don't feel good, and they go back and eat it again once they take their Pepto-Bismol or whatever. It's the craziest dang thing that I've ever seen. Who decided on how we get well? Well, we listen to the media, we listen to the FDA, we look at food pyramids, which are totally wrong. We should be flipping them upside down. We shouldn't have our whole diet in bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and grains. I can keep on going on and on. The bottom line is, why should we take herbs, right? Because they're such beautiful, natural, living, complex organisms. And we need something very vital that has a life force, that gives us a life force back, that is so complex that we need a complex medicinal to treat our complex bodies. We keep on using these single chemicals, medications, and to treat chronic devastating diseases like high blood pressure and diabetes and cardiovascular disorders. We just end up with weight gain. We end up with more and more symptoms. We end up with more and more side effects, more and more adverse drug reactions when we start combining them. My goal is today, and I hope I surpassed that for you today. My goal today was to awaken you, not to provide you every single piece of data on herbal medicine, but to awaken you that we have to start thinking about medicine differently. We have to start thinking about nutrition and herbs to support the body and not physiologically just compensate for it when it goes wrong, which means just treating the symptoms. It doesn't work. As soon as you stop the drug, the symptoms come right back. No healing is occurring there. You have to get to the root cause of the why. Thank you so much for being with me. Cliff's giving me the high signs, like I'm only going to be choked right off the stage here. Thank again, Tracy and Linda, for being with me on Facebook. You can watch my show on traditional Chinese healing. That is on Facebook, and look at the podcast every single episode. If you have symptoms right now, call my office, 398-4550. If you have questions, call my office, 398-4550. If you want to type me a message, info@traditionalchinesehealing.com. They'll bring that in and I'll get an answer right back to you. Symptoms aren't going to go away, folks. They're our worst enemy. You think it's going to get better, it ends up getting worse. Just don't wait. Chinese said thousands of years ago, treat it early. Much easier to treat imbalances early than wait until. Why wait to forge your weapons when the battle's already began? True Chinese philosophy. Why wait to dig a well when you're already thirsty? Too late. Get early, get checked out early. When you do that, you'll have, it's so much easier on us as physicians, and you're going to get so much better of a quicker result. But get your body checked out. All that it requires is one phone call, 398-4550. May the Chi be with you. May you be blessed abundantly by our dear Lord with perfect health. And until I see you next week on A Better Way to Health. Cliff, take us away.